difficulty, which makes reading, holding a book, or turning a page difficult or impossible. The content is copyrighted by the respective publishers. For more information, please visit us on the web at nfradioreading.org.
Hello, this is Laura. And for the next hour, I'll be reading from the March 1st issue of the New York Times Style section on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Dad, you're so not embarrassing me at this concert. Across the country, dads are donning sparkly blazers and purple wigs to bond with their Gen Z and Alpha kids on their own turf, be it the Eras Tour or K-pop Demon Hunters. By Ashley Spencer. When the comedian Paul Scheer set out to capture footage of fathers at Taylor Swift's concerts in Inglewood, California in 2023, he thought he would find a smattering of men begrudgingly chaperoning their daughters to the Eras Tour. I went there expecting it to be these bitter dads like, "I don't like Taylor Swift," Mr. Scheer, 50, said. But by interview 2, I was like, ooh, I've misread this. Speaking to dads in the parking lot at SoFi Stadium, Mr. Scheer, who is a fan of Ms. Swift and the father of 2 boys, captured a heartwarming portrait of devotion, which he compiled into a documentary short, Swiftie Dads, and posted on YouTube in December. Some dads had driven hours with their children just to listen to the concert from outside the venue. Others had fought the online ticket wars and won. Many wore themed outfits and friendship bracelets. All of them wanted to connect with their kids, Mr. Scheer said. While studies show that in heterosexual partnerships, mothers still take on an overwhelming majority of unpaid childcare and household work, Gen X and millennial fathers are participating in their children's lives more than dads of previous generations did. And when it comes to pop music, many dads are not just tolerating their children's interests, but enthusiastically embracing them. Across the country from Mr. Scheer's Eras Tour experience, Dave McCarthy, 56, of Worcester, Massachusetts, paired his trusty Red Sox visor with a gold sequined bow tie and a matching blazer to accompany his daughter Kate, 21, to one of Ms. Swift's shows in Foxborough, Massachusetts. His ensemble was meant as a tribute to the singer's Fearless album, which he and his daughter first enjoyed together when she was a 4-year-old singing You Belong With Me in the living room. At the concert, Mr. McCarthy belted the lyrics to many of Miss Swift's hits, energetically jumping up and down and screaming, "I'm feeling 22," when the occasion called for it. After all the years the pair spent listening to Miss Swift's music together, Ms. McCarthy said, the lyrics had no choice but to seep into his brain. His encouragement is very enthusiastic. Mr. McCarthy's younger daughter is a country music fan, so he has also happily accompanied her to the concerts of Zach Bryan. He was low-key fire, according to Mr. McCarthy, and Morgan Wallen. He was mid. You only get one chance doing this with your kid, Mr. McCarthy said. My life has always been, since they were born, what are they doing? Because I'm doing it with them, and I've enjoyed every second. Mr. McCarthy's wife, Liz McCarthy, said that she felt very, very lucky to have Dave be the dad that he is. I took Kate to a One Direction concert when she was little, and there was a father sitting next to us who read the newspaper the whole concert, she added. I look back at Dave, and he's going to these concerts and full out enjoying it. Sometimes I think more than the girls. Of course, this isn't the first generation of fathers to bond with their children over music, and mothers, aunts, uncles, older siblings, and other caregivers have been doing the vital work of accompanying young fans to shows for decades. But pop music, especially when it comes to artists with large teen and youth fan bases, is often thought of as a more feminine arena. And it is an area where heterosexual men can feel like outsiders. Ms. Swift's audience is estimated to be more than 70% female, and a recent Billboard survey found that 80% of K-pop listeners in the United States are female. Now, many fathers aren't just imparting their own musical tastes on their kids, but engaging in a reciprocal relationship where their children's preferences inform their own. And by attending these concerts and listening to music with lyrics centered around girlhood, some men are gaining a greater understanding of their own daughter's experience. Augustine Sedgwick, a historian and the author of Fatherhood, A History of Love and Power, noted that fathers partaking in leisure time with their children didn't begin until after World War II, and that the more recent rise of social media has flattened previously disparate generational music experiences, making it easier for parents to keep up with the same trends as their children. Having fun singing and dancing shouldn't be seen as inherently feminine or childish, Dr. Sedgwick said. Maybe dads and kids sharing music could be one way to challenge some of the artificially and incorrectly, in my view, gendered labels that too often get attached to music, art, and culture. And it's not just the Swiftie dads who are unabashedly immersing themselves in their kids' pop obsessions. At the 2025 U.S. Open, the tennis player Novak Djokovic, 38, did the soda pop dance from the animated musical film K-pop Demon Hunters on the court in honor of his daughter Tara's 8th birthday. "She's going to rape me tomorrow because she told me how to dance," Mr. Djokovic said at a news conference afterward, adding, "We are at home doing different choreographies, and this is one of them." Similarly, Ryan Senegal, 44, of Manteca, California, has watched K-pop Demon Hunters with his daughter Sabine, 9, dozens of times. The soundtrack dominates their car rides together, and for Halloween, Mr. Senegal ordered coordinating K-pop Demon Hunters costumes. Sabine dressed as the pop star character Zoe, while Mr. Senegal morphed into a demon known as Mystery Saja, complete with purple wig, and at another event, the giant blue feline Derpy. Mr. Senegal said his own father had battled addiction and had been absent during his childhood. "That shaped how I am as a parent," he said. "I don't care about embarrassing myself. People are like, 'Ooh, that's cringe.' Well, I don't care. My daughter likes it." Sarah Blaffer Hurdy, an anthropologist and the author of Father Time, believes these shared experiences have physiological benefits for both fathers and children. The act of caring produces caring, and it's reciprocal, Dr. Hurdy said. That intimacy has its own implications for your endocrine system. If your oxytocin level is higher, you're going to be more prone to bond and live longer in the process. For his daughter's 15th birthday, Christian Lopez, 51, of Carmel, Indiana, waited all day for Olivia Rodrigo to take the stage at last year's Lollapalooza festival in Chicago with his wife, Leslie Lupton, and their 2 daughters, Zadie, 15, and Darian, 12. When the pop star sang the opening lines of Pretty Isn't Pretty, her mid-tempo ballad about body and beauty insecurities, the crowd was awash with tears, including those of Mr. Lopez. In a viral TikTok video, Mr. Lopez could be seen bopping along to the song while standing behind his daughters. As the lyrics about skipping meals and hiding behind makeup registered, he looked around at his sobbing daughters and the other girls in the crowd, and his mouth contorted into a pained frown. All of these girls are amazing. And then all of a sudden that song comes on, and they're all crying about how they don't even eat cake on birthdays, Mr. Lopez said in a video interview. It made me cry. I was like, why? Why not? The family tries to attend as many concerts together as they can, and the experience at Miss Rodrigo's concert opened up a new understanding of his children, Mr. Lopez said. We're very involved in their lives, Mr. Lopez said. I'm with them for travel, sports, their homework, and everything. And yet my 12-year-old was screaming, crying about not looking pretty in the mirror, and I was thinking, am I failing? Afterward, he said to them, I told them, when you feel like those moments, you have to be able to come to us and tell us if you want to. It's always an open door. Fashion review. A Prada show so good it overshadowed Mark Zuckerberg. Miuccia Prada and Raf Simons offer a multi-layered mediation on dressing and some really great shoes. By Vanessa Friedman. A week after testifying in a Los Angeles trial about tech addiction, the Meta maestro Mark Zuckerberg and his wife, Priscilla Chan, took their seats at the Prada show in Milan. It was their first appearance at Fashion Week. Speculation started almost immediately. Was this a sign of a new phase in the fashion/tech relationship? Then the lights went out and the music came up, and afterward all anyone could talk about was the clothes. Not those worn by Mr. Zuckerberg or Miss Chan, the ones on the runway. Shows can often seem like a delivery system for celebrity sightings, but this time it was the collection that mattered. That's how good Prada was. Come for the Marie Antoinette kitten heels, dripping in beads, the chunky grandpa knits, and full skirts ripped at the seams to show a second layer of florals peeking through. But stay for the ideas. Hems were frayed and dangling threads. Black dresses were ripped open to show Watu prints underneath. Wrinkles were perma-pressed into tweeds with lapels encrusted by beads. Were they fancy or falling apart? Why can't they be both? The way a raspberry satin cocktail dress with a heavy-duty zipper up the front and what looked like sun bleaching on one side could be utilitarian and frivolous at the same time. Co-creative directors Miuccia Prada and Raf Simons were using a collection built in 4 layers to excavate the many strata of woman's life. Or, as Mrs. Prada said backstage after the show, as she and Mr. Simons were mobbed by an overexcited crowd, the continuous necessity of changing for all the different personalities, moments, sentiments, sexuality a woman lives in one day. The result is a study of the way personal history is embedded in imperfection, how identities are built up over time, and that no one is ever merely one thing or the other. There were only 15 models in the show, and each appeared 4 times, strutting down the runway in one outfit, only to disappear backstage, shrug it off like shedding a skin, and emerge renewed to start the whole cycle again. That is, after all, how dressing works. You put on and take off a variety of pieces throughout the day, depending on how you want to be seen and where you're going. Imagine a varsity jacket worn over a floral skirt hidden beneath what looked like an overskirt of sheer black. Then imagine that the overskirt turned out actually to be a transparent black shirt dress, which turned out to be covering a Victorian cotton shift decoupaged with fragmentary images, Greek statues, Wedgwood porcelains, Art Deco etchings. That, too, covered a gray flannel tank top and gray cotton bloomers. Imagine leather car coats and tweed overcoats atop beaded skirts and zip-up cardigans covering crisp cotton shirting. Imagine what you might add or subtract, and when. That was just the most literal aspect of the layering, which also included meditations on rich and poor, opulence and simplicity, sportswear and couture, as well as reminders of shared history. Those elaborately jeweled heels were worn with knee socks, festooned with tiny rosebuds at the ankle and designed to be deliberately baggy at the calf. Bulbous brogues had pre-scuffed toes, and knee-high lace-up boots were covered in feathers. Each piece on its own was compelling. Okay, maybe not the undershorts, though TikTok might love them. But together they added up to something even more powerful. Dress as a form of living anthropology. Every day you decide, what will I do with what? What is possible? And then you do it in another way and another way, Mr. Simons said. From that angle, every closet contains multitudes. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the New York Times Style section on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Putting on the Shivets. This harsh winter, some New Yorkers found refuge at SaunaFest in Domino Park in Brooklyn, with curated sweat sessions led by towel-swinging sauna masters. By Cassia Pilat. It's 5:30 p.m. on a Saturday, and the sunlight is fading over Domino Park in the Williamsburg section of Brooklyn. "Do you like rock and roll?" asks Adrian Manolash as he steps into the 75-person sauna set up for the Sauna Festival, an 18-day event taking place along the Brooklyn waterfront, hosted by Culture of Bathing, an organization sponsored by Therm Group. A few mutters escape from the crowd of some 24 sweating bodies sitting on 4 levels of wooden benches. He presses play on a boombox, sending the twangy opening notes of Dire Straits' Sultans of Swing into the steamy air. For the next 15 minutes or so, Mr. Manolash, 31, a sauna master from Therm, Bucharest, a spa in Romania, leads an Aufguss, an interactive sauna experience that incorporates various elements selected by the guide. Some sessions are more elaborate, integrating colored lights, costumes, or fans. But Mr. Manolash, who is wearing loose-fitting black pants and nothing else, is always moving, spinning a simple white towel overhead like a flag, twirling it up in the air like a baton, and dribbling it between his legs like a basketball to circulate the heavy heat. Occasionally, he steps up on the sauna bench to be closer to the crowd, flapping his towel to the beat. It can be hard to breathe amid the sweltering sauna heat, which hovers between 165 and 194 degrees Fahrenheit. But he moves with ease. At times, you can even see him grinning. It takes months of training to become an Aufgussmeister, or sauna master. It is physically demanding, Mr. Manolash wrote in an email, performing in temperatures that often exceed 90 degrees Celsius, while maintaining precision, control, and connection with the audience requires endurance and discipline. I train regularly: cardio, breath control, mobility, and strength to maintain stamina. Mr. Manolash's was one of 12 Aufguss sessions taking place that day, and there were 250 scheduled throughout the duration of the festival, which runs from February 12th through March 1st. There are several other offerings, including sound baths, meditation sessions, traditional Slavic banya experiences, and lectures on queer bathhouse architecture, scheduled across 15 different sauna stations throughout the festival. Teams of sauna masters who make a living from sweating in rooms with strangers were invited stateside from Europe to participate in the festival. The word Aufguss translates to infusion in German, and part of the idea is to distract those in the sauna from the heat. Robert Hammond, a founder of Culture of Bathing, said his first Aufguss experience converted him into a sauna fan. "I'd always liked saunas, but saunas are hard to sit through," Mr. Hammond said. "With Aufguss, Time flies by, he said. It's not like I talk to people next to me, necessarily, but it made me feel more connected with the people in the room. Like we went through a joint experience together, he added. For the remainder of his session, Mr. Manolash, queued up by a soundtrack with the song Have You Ever Seen the Rain by Creedence Clearwater Revival. Before each track, he dissolved a snowball infused with essential oils, lemon, Douglas fir, and nutmeg, on the hot stove, creating a heavy steam that fogged up the windows. It was an intensely sensory journey, eliciting looks of delight and awe from the crowd. It even moved several young men to join in. I want to know, have you ever seen the rain coming down on a sunny day? They sang, as Mr. Manolash whipped his towel. The guy walked in, and he was wearing an Aufguss World Champion sweatshirt. Corey Scheinfeld, 25, a software engineer who lives in Williamsburg, said. And I was like, this is going to be great. I'm in the right place right here. A recent devotee of saunas after having shoulder surgery, Mr. Scheinfeld, said this was his second visit to the festival. He brought his girlfriend for Valentine's Day, he said. And they had the best Valentine's Day ever. Some of the performances, he said, left him feeling giddy, so he returned the next weekend with friends. There's no place we would rather be than with each other in a sauna, sweating it out, Mr. Scheinfeld said. Callie Haar, 30, an account executive at Salesforce, decided to stop by the festival after watching the structures being built through the window of her friend's apartment in a building nearby. The session with Mr. Manolash was her first Aufguss experience. What did she think? It definitely had a funny, sexy vibe, she said. Mr. Hammond said he didn't have immediate plans to make the sauna festival into an annual event, focusing instead on promoting local spas and evangelizing bathing and sauna culture. He has even created a Google map of current and soon-to-be-open saunas in New York. Aufguss is part of sauna culture, Hammond said, but it's not as widely known in the U.S., adding that there are not many spas offering Aufguss in the country. Those looking to delve further might consider the Aufguss World Championships, which will be held in Berlin this September. What was it like to work at Calvin Klein in the 90s? Ask them. FX's Love Story has former employees waxing nostalgic about calla lilies, always white, paper clips, always black, and desk lunches, generally discouraged. By Madison Malone Kircher. Love Story, FX's new docudrama series chronicling the doomed romance of John F. Kennedy Jr. and Carolyn Bessette, paints a very particular picture of what it was like to work in the 1990s at Calvin Klein, where Ms. Bessette was employed for several years. The show, which is produced by Ryan Murphy, portrays the brand's Manhattan office as a temple of duotone minimalism, clean architectural lines, white flowers, and a perpetual haze of cigarette smoke. Thin women in smart blazers and turtlenecks carrying around neat piles of papers organized with black paper clips, only black paper clips. Reality, according to some who experienced it firsthand, was actually pretty similar. Love Story has sparked new conversations among former Calvin Klein employees, some of whom have posted TikTok videos to give younger viewers a sense of what it was really like to live and work in an era now nostalgically memorialized by the resurgence of minimalist eyewear, straight-leg denim, and handbags that never had to bear the oppressive weight of a laptop. Mary Beth Kelly started working at Calvin Klein in 1994 as an intern while she was a student at Mount Holyoke College in Massachusetts. She remembered the office as feeling electric and glamorous, and recalled watching the model Kate Moss walk by her desk. It was a cultural moment, but we didn't know it was history. We were just trying to keep up with the business, Miss Kelly, now 52 and a real estate agent in Boston, said. She added that Ms. Bissett had once bummed a cigarette off her in the office. Tiffany Kraft, 57, said she worked at Calvin Klein from 1996 to 1999 as an international account executive and recalled a hard work, hard play mentality among her colleagues. It was not unusual for her to be at the office until midnight or later, she said. She remembers seeing Mr. Klein pacing the halls, looking at designs on one of those late nights. Representatives for Calvin Klein brand did not respond to requests for comment on Thursday. Ms. Kraft recalled being struck by the design of the office itself. It was very minimalist, she said, though she wouldn't have used that term in 1996. We talked about it as a very clean design, she recalled. The first time that I had an interview and the elevator door opened, I just thought to myself, this is not a normal office building, said Miss Kraft, who now lives in Los Angeles and works for her family's music licensing business. She remembered the famous calla lilies perched on the reception desk in a very specific position. We only had white calla lilies in our building. On TikTok, in a phone interview, Tracy Kane, who said she joined Calvin Klein in 1998 to work in merchandising, remembered that a painting crew had come by regularly to touch up scuffs on the pristine white walls in the night. It was a very controlled environment, she said. You weren't allowed to walk around with messy papers in your hands, she said. They wanted everything in dark gray folders. Ms. Kane, who is 55 and lives in Tampa, Florida, also recalled the black paper clips, a detail recreated in Love Story. There was a level of polish where everybody came to work looking a certain way, Ms. Kane, who now works as a host for HSN, added. That way did not involve much makeup. In another TikTok video, Ms. Kraft demonstrated the makeup routine she used in that era. A light Chanel foundation, a MAC eyeshadow in the shade rice paper, and lipstick, best and most simply described as lip color. Ms. Kraft recalled having a clothing allowance and wearing a very specific uniform for the office, including suits and the famous Calvin Klein turtleneck. Arriving to the office each day surrounded by hundreds of colleagues in similar garb. Imagine a sea of women, some men as well too, but predominantly females, walking down 7th Avenue to come to 39th Street, Ms. Kraft said. We were a mirror image of one another. She described that image as thin, blonde, and brunette. Kim Pilson, who said she worked at Calvin Klein from 1998 to 2001, described the thrill of driving to New Jersey early in the morning to shop at employee sample sales at the brand's warehouse, where she and her friends were able to buy Calvin Klein clothing at steep discounts. Once you got in, you just went running, said Miss Pilson, now a 54-year-old wedding planner who lives in Manhattan. You had your plastic bag, and you just filled it with anything that might interest you. In a TikTok video, Sylvie Fitzgerald, Miss Pilson's daughter, recently modeled some of the pieces and commented on how well the styles had held up. Ms. Pilson described a specific look shared among employees. It's sad to say, but I think that they really only hired pretty good-looking people, she said. I felt like some of the things I was asked to do you would never be able to get away with now, Ms. Pilson said. She described starting each day by fetching a lentil soup and a fresh squeezed orange juice for her boss. I never really saw anyone eating food at their desk, she added, of her fellow lower-level employees. Lorna Neligan, an author who lives in Dublin, said she crossed paths with Miss Bissett during a brief stint as a temp at Calvin Klein in the early 90s. Miss Neligan, 64, recalled Miss Bissett as a great person and described her once letting Miss Neligan into the office closet to borrow an outfit to wear to a wedding. "If she liked you, Miss Neligan said. If she didn't, unfortunately, she really had no time for you. I was lucky." One day at the office, Miss Neligan said she answered the phone and a journalist from a local news outlet was on the other line talking about having spotted a Calvin Klein employee in Central Park with John F. Kennedy Jr. Miss Neligan said she had looked immediately to Miss Bissett, who promptly ran into Mr. Klein's office. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the New York Times Style section on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Can Demna Save Gucci? The inside story of how the designer is transforming the brand and himself, by Vanessa Friedman. There is a corridor in the sprawling Gucci headquarters on the outskirts of Milan that is unlike any other corridor in the white and glass walled space. It is a corridor that leads to the office of Gucci's new creative director, Demna, the mononymic man charged with rescuing the fashion brand from the cliff over which its sales have recently plunged. And it isn't really a corridor at all. It's more like a black hole. Black walls, black floor, black ceiling. To enter it is to be swallowed by the dark. But then, at its end, when Demna opens his door, light. How's that for a metaphor? It's a reminder this is a reset, Demna said in January, with some levity. Even he knows the symbolism is a little obvious, but sometimes obvious is exactly what you need. He was standing at his desk, a large wooden table covered in one of the lace tablecloths he collects. He has about 50. So it looked as if it was about to be set for an old-fashioned tea party rather than a business meeting. On one wall were 2 large photographs of his chihuahuas, Cookie and Chiquita, each wearing a pair of his signature buggy black sunglasses. Above the desk was a mirrored metallic apple by the artist Claire Fontaine, like the Apple logo, before the bite was taken out, or eaten before the fall. Demna has been busy remaking the space since he joined Gucci last March after 10 years at Balenciaga, in which he transformed that brand from a fashion darling beloved by the couture into a bona fide cultural phenomenon. Gucci itself had been a soaring success story until 2022, when its superstar designer, Alessandro Michele, was replaced by Sabato De Sarno, and an attempt at a quiet luxury pivot went badly wrong. From 2022 to 2025, revenue went from about 10.5 billion euros, approximately $12.4 billion, to 6 billion euros, $7 billion. Demna was the brand's Hail Mary. Yet the appointment was, despite Demna's previous successes, a surprise to many who thought of him as a streetwear proselytizer and recoiled from the idea of oversized hoodies in the realm of Jackie O's bamboo bag. The day after the announcement, the share price of Kering, the group that owns Gucci and Balenciaga, fell. Even François-Henri Pinault, the chairman of Kering, wasn't initially convinced. Gucci, after all, has more than 17,000 employees and represents about 40% of the group's revenue. They couldn't get it wrong again. But here's the thing, said Francesca Bettolini, Gucci's chief executive, whose idea it was to approach Demna in the first place. It wasn't just Gucci that was ready for a new look. Demna was too. Now, as he prepares for his show on February 27th, their attitude, Miss Bellatini said, is, "Okay, I'll show you." Plot twist, said Loic Gomez, Demna's husband. One evening in early November, Demna, 44, was in Los Angeles hosting the Los Angeles County Museum of Art Gala, which Gucci sponsors. He was trying out the prototype of a new Gucci leather motorcycle jacket and some loafers, and standing at the entry to the party, greeting guests and gamely posing for pictures with Elle Fanning and Demi Moore, each of whom he had dressed for the event. He schmoozed his way through dinner and the official after-party, where Doja Cat performed in Gucci, and the private after-party in Beverly Hills, where he hung out with Ed Norton and his wife. When I came home, I wished I didn't have to speak to anybody for 3 days, Demna said the next day. He was wearing Balenciaga pajama pants with fake cartoon characters on them and a hoodie, and browsing at Book Soup in West Hollywood. He has something of a book fetish. He said the owners of Idea Books in London told him he was their second largest customer after the Metropolitan Museum of Art, though he didn't buy anything on this visit. He was still thinking about the night before and his host role. I liked it, he said. In the past, he said, I tried to hide in every possible way. When Demna was at Vetements, the upstart brand he co-founded in 2014 and left in 2019, and Balenciaga, he would never appear at the end of his shows for a bow. He hated revealing himself in public. When he had to be photographed, he wore a black jersey mask that covered his head. He even wore it when he attended the Met Gala in 2021. He is planning to go to the Met Gala again in May, but this time he won't be wearing a mask. The party used to make him almost paralytically nervous, he said, but now, walking back some previous critical comments, he sees it, he said, as the only place in fashion that celebrates fun and play. Fun and play are not words often associated with Demna. The more likely ones would be tortured and angry. His Vetements and Balenciaga shows often seemed like screams into the void, with sets that included a giant mud pit, a swirling snowstorm, and an immersive end-of-days video. I was convinced the only way that I could be creative and have ideas was if I was in a dark place, if I was the victim, if I felt betrayed, Demna said. I used to be this fashion designer who works late at night, parties, drinks, doesn't take care of his health. It went with his backstory, growing up in Soviet Georgia, forced to flee as a teenager with his family and resettle in Europe. He thought his fury came from an incoherent desire to change the status quo. But now he's been in therapy for more than 10 years and thinks maybe it was a lot about me not being enough for myself. He speaks the language of psychoanalysis as well as Italian, French, English, Russian, and Georgian. Antonin Tron, the new creative director of Balmain, who has known Demna since they attended the Royal Academy of Fine Arts in Antwerp, said he has been struck by how much more comfortable with himself Demna has become. Mr. Gomez, a musician who works under the name BFRND, which looks like befriend, and creates the soundtrack for Demna's shows, agreed. He is the person I know who works the most on himself, Mr. Gomez said. Once you make peace with pain and trauma, you learn you can be even more creative. But it takes a long time to realize the myth of the sad poet is not necessarily true. During his Balenciaga days, Demna and Mr. Gomez lived in Paris and Switzerland. But when Demna left the company, they decided to split their time between Los Angeles and Milan. All that remains in Zurich is Demna's clothing archive, decades worth of t-shirts, leather jackets, student work, and even his grade school uniform, and several tons of books. It's obviously not the easiest moment to go to the United States, Demna said, but Los Angeles is where he feels most comfortable. In Paris, both he and Mr. Gomez often felt judged in a negative way, So much so that Mr. Gomez said it became more and more difficult to feel free and feel safe. Los Angeles is where Demna proposed to Mr. Gomez a decade ago during a pool party, and it is where they have bought a home, a 1950s bungalow that they are renovating in its original style, and that Demna said looks a bit like a strip club bungalow. Before he got the Gucci job, Demna had been planning to leave Balenciaga, move to Los Angeles, and start his own line, though he wasn't entirely sure what it would be. When he agreed to take on Gucci instead, he built a clause into his contract that gives him the option of a separate artistic project. His current hobby is buying 18th century portraits from antique markets and having them restored, with a few alterations. Imagine a girl in a Victorian dress, but with dripping black eyeliner. For a while, he was doing the same thing with the porcelain figurines he collects, adding heavy metal makeup to a Russian ballerina. The idea of taking something classic and giving it a different context appeals to him. Maybe one day he will exhibit them or sell them, he said. While he and Mr. Gomez are waiting for the Los Angeles house to be habitable, they are getting acclimated to Milan, where they have rented a traditional Milanese apartment. It has yellow walls, Demna said. I never thought I would live in a place that has a yellow wall. Mr. Gomez describes it as palazzo meets grunge. There are gold and mirrors everywhere, Mr. Gomez said, but in the middle we have 4 sofas that are completely destroyed and a bit ugly. He called the contrast very us. In Milan, Demna said, his days are heavily structured. Wake up, work out, meditate, cuddle with dogs. Go to the office at noon. He said he learned from Marc Jacobs to reserve the morning for himself because once he is at the office, his time is no longer his own. Demna changed his diet a few years ago when he discovered he had elevated blood sugar, and now he said, for the first time in my life, I feel good physically, though I don't know how many more broccolis I can have. He hasn't had a drink in 7 years, and he no longer craves tiramisu at 11 p.m. He tries to be in bed by 10:30. I feel the happiest I've ever felt, Demna said. I feel lighter. Still, when Demna got to Gucci, the mood was a little bit hopeless, he said. Not only had Gucci become almost overnight a very public, critical, and commercial failure, but it was dragging Kering down with it. The share price had fallen 43.7% between 2022 and 2025. We have a responsibility to bring it back up and make it stay there, Ms. Bellatini said. That's the deal she said she made with Luca de Meo, the newish Kering chief executive, and Demna. If the designer can pull off his part, he will have achieved the rare feat in fashion, transforming not one, but 2 fashion houses. As a welcome gift, the staff gave him 17 notebooks for inspiration, recreations of Guccio Gucci's original sketches and jottings about bags and belts. Then Demna had 2 big epiphanies. The first happened when he went to the Uffizi Gallery in Florence, Italy, and saw the birth of Venus. It really moved me, he said. I had tears. Then when I came out, I saw Palazzo Gucci, and I realized there is Uffizi, there is Michelangelo, there is Botticelli, and there is Palazzo Gucci. The second came from his 16-year-old cousin, who told him Gucci had become a Gen Z slang term. Like, she says, I feel Gucci today, or it's too Gucci, Demna said. That exploded my brain. It means that this is more than a brand. It can also represent an emotion or be a state of mind. Now, he said, I'm using it a lot at work. I feel Gucci today. For him, Gucci is, he said, at the center of Italian culture and also about having fun. not taking it too seriously, not being naive, but not giving too much space to the drama. It has to be both classic and push boundaries. So he is designating what he refers to as Gucci Core, a set of basics that will always be available, and Gucci Runway. If the short movie Demna unveiled in September established a set of Gucci characters all dressed in his idea of signature Gucci style, the prima donna, the Contessa, and the Bastardo among them, and the pre-collection unveiled the December plumbed Tom Ford's Gucci, he has something else planned for the next show. What I want to bring to Gucci is cultural relevance, and cultural relevance does not come from mainstream culture, ever, Demna said. It comes from lesser known or unknown talent. It comes from underground. To that end, he is weighing whether celebrity ambassadors and a celebrity front row are worth the money. It's like an arranged marriage, he said. I hate the idea of having to pay someone to wear your clothes if they don't want to wear them. I hate the word ambassador in general. We tried to have ChatGPT come up with a different word, but it didn't work. Instead, he has targeted about 20 artists he described through his Spotify algorithm, including the British rappers Fake Mink and SD Kid, the rapper everyone thought for a while was Timothée Chalamet in disguise, and invited them to the show. He is also exploring a new system of sizing, making it less about numbers, 0 to 4, and more about body types, short and skinny, tall and skinny, short and powerful. That's harder than it might sound, since it involves not merely upsizing or downsizing a standard, but making new and different patterns for each piece. But ideally, more body types mean clothes that are more relevant to more consumers. He knows everyone is waiting for the Gucci hoodie, but he said that is exactly what I wouldn't do, obviously. He's thinking body conscious, feeling more physically confident. He has been designing a narrower silhouette. He's trying to engineer a new kind of minimalism, eliminating seams, making everything lighter. I thought about the iPhone and Apple when they started and how the approach was about smart design, he said. You know, what do we really need? Until now, I always designed to impress myself intellectually, turning things upside down, making strange sleeves, a lot of what you get when you study fashion in Belgium. But at Gucci, I feel I don't have to do it. It's not about the concept. It's about a great jacket. You try it on yourself. And on everyone around you, apparently. Mr. Gomez said he had his eye on a lot of very beautiful shoes. There may be a lot of leather in the show, as well as a shearling given the mink treatment and crocodile. I discovered I am in love with crocodile, he said. Ms. Bellatini has been wearing a 1960-ish bright red coat from the September movie collection with narrow squared-off shoulders that she said gives her attitude. This show is how I would love to dress, Demna said, giggling. He really giggled. He was toying with including some men wearing jackets over bare chests. That's one of his goals for himself. He's not quite there yet, he said, but he thinks some tight-fitting jeans would be a good start. Modern love. How heated rivalry thawed the chill between my father and me. A racy show about a romance between male hockey players was not an obvious candidate for me to bond with my 89-year-old father. By David Samuel Levinson. When my 89-year-old father told me that he heard I went virus, I gently corrected him. I didn't go virus, I said. I went viral. A small distinction, the kind that usually doesn't matter much in families like ours, where misunderstandings have had a way of calcifying into permanent shapes. But this one mattered to me. Virus suggested contagion, danger, something to be contained. Viral suggested, well, not fame exactly, but recognition. a sudden flicker of being seen. I had rehearsed this visit in my head on the drive from downtown San Antonio, where I lived, to his gated community 30 miles north. I always did. Keep it light, don't provoke, don't correct too much, don't expect anything resembling emotional fluency. The rules were internalized long ago, as reliable as muscle memory. By the time I pulled into his driveway, I felt steady. I was good at being the version of myself my father could tolerate. As a child, I absorbed quickly what moved my father and what didn't. He responded to achievement, order, restraint. He had little patience for emotional mess, least of all his own. When I was upset, he told me to calm down. When I was excited, he told me not to get ahead of myself. Love in our house arrived indirectly through provision, rules, and an insistence on self-control. I learned to translate myself into a language he might understand, and when that failed, I learned silence. We were sitting in his living room on a Sunday afternoon, the television dark, the windows washed in thin winter light. At 89, my father's world had contracted. The days were organized around meals, medications, and the phone calls he still answered. The house, once loud with argument and authority, now felt paused, as if waiting for instructions that never came. I had come to see him out of a sense of filial duty that I no longer tried to dress up as enthusiasm. After everything, my mother's death, the years we didn't speak, I had learned to manage visits carefully. I arrived with modest expectations and an exit plan. This was how love functioned now. Measured, cautious, survivable. Your brother said you went virus, my father repeated. Viral, I said again, on Instagram. That stopped him. My father, who still referred to the internet as the web, leaned forward slightly. What's Instagram? I hesitated. I could already feel the familiar irritation warming up, the reflexive knowledge that anything central to my life would be treated as marginal, anything emotional as indulgent. When I was young, we fought constantly. In my teens and 20s, we butted heads with more eloquence but no less force. He had strong ideas about who I should be and how I should live and what counted as seriousness. I had equally strong ideas about his marriage to my mother, the way he spoke to her and how casually he withheld affection, as if love were something you rationed for discipline's sake. After my mother died in 2016, my resentment hardened into something quieter and more permanent. We stopped speaking. I told myself it was principled, necessary. I told myself that adulthood meant choosing distance over damage. Still, there were moments, holidays, birthdays, idle afternoons, when the silence felt less like protection and more like a refusal to keep hoping. And I missed him. Over the years, I made tentative attempts to let him see pieces of my life. I downloaded books I loved on Kindle. I shared articles that mattered to me. Eventually, I learned to stop offering. It's not really for you, I said finally. Just videos. What kind of videos? He asked. I told him about the reel I had posted, how I'd talked about a television show that had moved me more than I expected, how I'd cried while recording it, and how it had been shared and watched by tens of thousands of people. I said the show was called Heated Rivalry, a queer hockey romance adapted from Rachel Reed's books about two men whose rivalry gives way to something more vulnerable and harder to defend against. I said this carefully, trying not to sound as if I were asking for approval. I had, I believed, given up on that a long time ago. He listened without interrupting. When I showed him the reel on my phone, he leaned in, squinting, his face inches from the screen. I watched him watching me, my voice, emotion, and vulnerability flattened into 60 seconds. I braced myself for deflection, the joke, the comment that would let him stay emotionally adjacent and untouched. Instead, he said nothing. When the reel ended, he looked at me, not with embarrassment or confusion, but with a kind of alert curiosity I hadn't seen in years. What's the show about? He asked. I told him. 2 men, hockey players, rivals, love. I waited for the reflexive discomfort, the quick subject change. My father was a man of his era. Feeling, especially feeling that didn't resemble his own, had always made him uneasy. I want to watch it, he said. I laughed, assuming he was kidding. He wasn't. Soon the room filled with the sound of skates carving ice, the low thunder of crowds, the awkward magnetism of 2 men circling each other, unsure whether what they felt would be returned. I stole glances at my father while he watched. His posture, usually stiff, softened. His face, so often armored with skepticism, began to register with surprise. When one of the characters finally said what he had been holding back, said it plainly, without irony or retreat, my father made a small sound. A breath, maybe. His hand tightened on the armrest as if he needed something solid. After the episode ended, the room felt altered. I didn't know, he said at last. Didn't know what? I asked. What it was like, he said. For you. The sentence sat between us, unmistakable. I thought of all the years I had spent wanting this, wanting him to see me, not as a problem to be managed, but as a person whose inner life mattered. I told myself I no longer needed that recognition, that I was past it, that maturity meant release. And yet my body reacted before my philosophy could intervene. Later that night, after I went home, I found myself replaying the afternoon with a precision that surprised me. The way he leaned forward, how his voice softened, and how he had reached for the armrest as if bracing himself against feeling. At 89, there is no illusion of endless time. There is only what can still be said and felt, and the narrowing space in which to say or feel it. As I was leaving, my father stopped me. I'm glad you went viral, he said. I'm glad people are listening to you. Driving home, I thought about how love often arrives late, when both people are finally tired enough to stop defending themselves. I thought about the word virus, how close it was to viral, how both imply spread, transmission, contact. I thought about how love works the same way, as something that moves unpredictably between people, finding openings where it can. A queer hockey romance didn't fix my relationship with my father, but it created a moment of shared attention, a brief realignment of feeling, a recognition neither of us had known how to ask for. And sometimes that kind of love, I'm learning, the late, imperfect kind, is enough. You've been listening to a reading of articles and features from the March 1st issue of the New York Times Style section. Your reader has been Laura. Thank you for listening.
Coming up next in the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, we have the USA Today. Following that at 2 o'clock is episode number 45 of Mark Twain by Ron Chernow. Stay with us for these readings and more. You're listening to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, broadcasting daily readings 24 hours a day of newspapers, magazines, and books to area people who are blind or have a print disability, who are provided reading radios. Radio Readings broadcast signal is provided at no charge by WNED. Radio Reading Studios are at 1199 Harlem Road in Cheektowaga, between William and Clinton Streets. Radio Reading's website is nfradioreading.org. For more information on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, call us at 716-821-5555.
The Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service